Good morning. This is the editor's desk, and I'm here with Matt Keys. Matt, how are you?
I'm about $5 lighter in the wallet. Rick, how are
Why are
you?
you $5 lighter in the wallet, Matt?
Well, our audience will recall that 2 weeks ago when we did our show last, we were just coming out of the Super Bowl and we had a wager going as to how the audience numbers were going to go. And if correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our wager was you believed that the stronger audience would be in the first half of the Super Bowl, then the halftime show would happen, and then the audience would drop off in the second half.
Yep.
My wager was the precise opposite on the belief that as people saw that the game was a blowout and not going in the direction that I think everybody thought it would go in, which is that the Chiefs were going to have a three-peat, that the audience would pick up after the halftime show. Now, that is not conventionally how it works, but I thought, I'll roll the dice on this. It's not a conventional game, right? So maybe they
No.
didn't have conventional audience numbers. Nope. We got those overnights first, and the overnights very much proved you correct. And then we got the full figures, and the full figures also proved you correct. The audience peaked during the second quarter. So
And
that just
by the
tells you
way,
that
and went up during halftime. So we
it
had
did go
that
up.
group of
Yeah.
folks who watched for the halftime show and then said, "Game schmame, I'm done."
Yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about this in the pre-show, which was that there are because Kendrick Lamar was the halftime performer. There probably were people that just watched the halftime show, just tuned in for the halftime show, and then watched something else. Maybe they didn't care about the teams that were playing. Maybe they're not football fans. Now, it's hard to believe, but there's people that don't watch the sport of football,
How could
but may
that
want to
be?
watch the halftime show.
Well,
So
part of our conversation today is going to be related to baseball, and some of that's going to be betting on baseball. But
mhm.
I do have to point out that that was the first sports bet I ever actually won, all of $5.
I was part of history there,
It
television
absolutely
history.
was when sports gambling became legal in Maryland. I got myself a $25 credit on FanDuel or DraftKings, one of them, and I think I've got 83 cents left. I'm not a big bettor, I
Mhm.
tend to be more in the sure thing business.
How do you feel about the notion that we talked a little bit about this on a previous episode, but the notion that sports betting is going to become a bigger part of the live sports watching experience. It's very much a mobile experience now. Like you have to have another device, but it seems like it's moving in the direction that you're going to get the odds on television. There are some platforms that are already doing that, and eventually that you'll be able to wager through your TV.
I think that you have to step back and look at who your audiences are. And we've talked about this, that there is, in the case of, for example, baseball and my Orioles, there are
Mm-hmm.
dedicated Orioles fans who will move heaven and earth to find the place that the Orioles game is being broadcast. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are casual fans who will, if they're going past it or if it's convenient or they don't have anything else to do or the game is the best thing on, right? They'll pick
Mm-hmm.
up the game. Those are actually the ones that the leagues and the teams desperately need. The dedicated fans, they got. Okay. It's almost like an election where you got the hardcore Republicans and the hardcore Democrats, and it's the undecideds in the middle that control. It's sort of the middle undecideds in baseball. But if Major League Sports can really groom the sports betting audience as many different ways as they can do it, that is monumentally important to the sports leagues and teams. That's a third category of audience who, frankly, don't give a rat's whatever it is about the team. They are looking at the odds and how much money they could make today.
Mm-hmm.
And along the line, by the way, they saw that ad for Chevy. And
Right.
there you are. Okay. They're not watching it for the advertising. They're not even watching it so much for the game. They're watching it for, they're going to be exposed to the Chevy ad unless they're watching NFL Red Zone. And you've had NFL Red Zone in the past, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. We've
That
had
if
it
you're a
for at least
sports
the past two or
bettor,
3 years.
you can do a really good job tracking all your different players on your fantasy league, for example, right?
Right.
Through Red Zone
Hmm.
and not necessarily concentrating on watching the full game.
Hmm.
So we're going to talk about sports. I always will take the perspective of the viewer and the fan
Yep.
and move up from there. So now we got some new news this past week about sports and ESPN and MLB and somebody stirring the pot. So what happened with all that?
This was interesting, and it kind of seemed to come out of nowhere, at least to me. There were probably people in our audience that saw this coming, but Disney's ESPN and Major League Baseball have had a contract in place to offer a package of games on a national basis through ESPN. I don't recall if that included ABC simulcast. It seemed like most of the games we've watched a couple of these games. Um, in the past, and it seemed like they were always on ESPN. Um, and the nugget of the story is that there were these opt out conditions, opt out clauses in the contract that allowed one or both sides to terminate the deal early. The contract ran through the 2028 season. It's now going to end with this season. So this baseball season, this upcoming baseball season, right? Because I don't even think we're in spring training yet at the time that we're recording this.
No, we are. No, we are in spring
Spring
training,
training is right
and the
now.
Orioles have already played on MLB Network, dude. Okay, keep going.
And you can see how much of a baseball fan I am. We'll probably get more into it because Sacramento is going to host the A's for the next
Yeah, the
few years.
Sacramento Athletics.
Yep. And I know that's much to the chagrin of our viewers and friends in the Bay Area, and I apologize to them. But it's I think it's going to be a good thing for Sacramento. So
No,
we'll
no, wait a
probably
minute.
get into.
I'm going to interrupt You need to get yourself, the A's have a good color scheme.
Mhm.
That deep green and that golden yellow
Yep.
is one of the classics of the business for a team that's been around forever. So
For a long time, yeah.
I expect you to be able to show your colors here at some point in the show, dude.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But the news that came out of ESPN and Major League Baseball is they're parting ways at the end of this upcoming season. Spring training is happening right now. So the games that will be aired on ESPN over the next coming months will be essentially the last ones that ESPN has. Major League Baseball's commissioner has come out and said that they're evaluating a number of different options to bring the games to fans. MLB has been pretty bullish on the idea of streaming the games, having more having more control over the local and national distribution of the games. And according to the memo that the commissioner sent out to the team owners, they have a few options kind of already on the table. He didn't really elaborate as to what that is, but ESPN aside, we've seen a couple of different players that have dipped their toes in baseball, different media players over the last few years. We saw Peacock had a package of games. They don't anymore. Roku has a package of games. They released their schedule last week. We posted that on our LinkedIn. And I believe, is Prime the other one? Fox has games and TBS has games. And I think Prime might also have games, or maybe those are just local games through FanDuel Sports.
I don't know. And I read this morning, we have met a fellow by the name of Narendra Nag from Victory Plus,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a streaming sports service who heretofore had hockey with the Dallas Stars and the Anaheim Ducks, which used to be the Mighty Ducks. I just read this
Mm-hmm.
morning they picked up the Texas Rangers
Oh, I've not seen that news, but
the
that doesn't
entire
surprise me.
season. Now, it is a subscription service inside Victory Plus, but it's
Mm-hmm.
$100 for the season. Which, when you consider there's 162 games, that ain't a bad deal. That's better than these guys that are trying to smack you for 30 or $40 a month, like Yankees. Did you hear me on that? $100 for the season for Rangers games is meaningful in the casual fan and the dedicated fan. Dedicated fans are going to go there for sure. They will bring
Mhm.
casual fans over, and at that point in fact in time, they might bring the betting. I don't know what the betting rules are in Texas, by the way, but they might bring the betting universe over as well. Certainly, the model will.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. What's
$100 for a
interesting,
season, and every time the Rangers play, they're obviously playing another team.
right?
So you're getting in league Rangers. I'll take the Orioles as an example. They're also American League. The Orioles are going to play the Yankees like 10 times. They're going to
Hmm.
play the Red Sox about 10 times. They're going to play the not the Diamondbacks, the Devil Rays about 10 times. They're going to play Cleveland about 10 times. So as a fan of the Yankees, you're getting a fairly significant helping of Yankee games through the Orioles pipeline, right? Um, Baseball is really complicated that way, and it just seems to be more so than everybody else because there's so many damn teams and so many games.
I think also to make it more complicated, there are different approaches in each market to the delivery of those games. And I'm thinking about, we're obviously going to have a baseball team here in Sacramento for the next few years, but our big professional sports team has been associated with the NBA,
Right.
and I create the schedule for our house every year of where the games are going to be on TV so that we can track it, and just with an Excel spreadsheet. There's only really three places. It's ESPN, at least through
Okay,
the end of the
I'm sorry.
season.
I do have to say, somebody who creates an Excel spreadsheet for their team falls in the category of fan, not casual user.
Well, I'll tell you why I do that. I do that because it's really hard to find a place online that will show me where every game is airing and on every station. And so I wind up having to use a combination of different websites just to find out where the games are, because when I go on, ESPN is always where I start at the very beginning of the season, even before the season starts, because I try to get these schedules compiled weeks in advance. I always start at ESPN, and they will kind of show you where the games are, but they will always show you the logo for ESPN when it's airing on their channel.
Right.
But the games also air on TNT. Next year they'll be on NBC and Prime, and they air on. We have an NBC owned regional sports network that has the rights to the Kings games. So it's helpful to have just one piece of paper that shows in an agnostic way where they are airing on television. And this has really come in handy over the last few years. But I do it out of necessity, not because, I want to. Otherwise, I'd be looking at my phone every week to find out where the games are playing. But that aside, with baseball, as someone who has kind of started covering baseball within the last few years as far as the media rights go, Victory Plus, that news actually came out last month, but it wasn't on my radar. What we did write about was that with the Rangers games, they're going to be on broadcast TV also. Nexstar signed a deal with the Rangers to bring 4 spring training games and at least 15 regular season games on on their TV network in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, the local broadcast region for the Rangers games. How many baseball games are there in an average season?
162.
So 15 is a small fraction of that. That's less than 10%.
Basically, that's how many Orioles games Yankees fans could see in the Orioles distribution path. Okay.
But Victory Plus will have all of the games
All
that aren't
of
on national
them,
TV.
the entire
Yeah.
season of Rangers games.
So
$100.
broadcast not only does two things in my mind. It brings the games for free and gives them a bigger reach than they otherwise would have if they were on cable. Precisely 0 Kings games are on free TV in a season here locally. 0. There are none during the season. Now, when they're in the playoffs, when they're in the play-ins, yes, those games are aired on national TV, on broadcast TV. But all of the games are on cable here. So I'm always envious when I see that Nexstar is bringing the baseball games, and or Gray Media is bringing some of the basketball games. They're sub licensing, and that's really what these agreements are. They're sub licensing the rights from the rights holders. In the case of baseball, though, a lot of those rights holders are the teams, which I think is kind of that's a unique situation in the sports world, that the teams actually have distribution rights to the games. The league gets involved to some degree. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's mostly
No, I
the
think you're
teams
right.
that have the rights.
And by the way, remember, and I'm trying to think of what it was called, but MLB Interactive, 10 years ago, more than that, was actually bought by Disney
Oh, BAMTech, yeah.
because they had the best software to manage all that crap. Okay. And they went over to areas outside sports. So I think part and parcel of the team's ability and interest in controlling all of that came from the fact that they sort of got in early and got it
Yeah.
figured out. There's an interesting thing, by the way, about broadcast. And okay, some small percent of TV viewers have an antenna to watch free over-the-air television. I'm not going to bother trying to guess that number. Another larger percent of local viewers have cable or satellite to watch free over-the-air television, but they got to subscribe to cable or satellite. Oddly enough, now the more universal distribution path for sports games is streaming. Everybody can stream. One way or t'other, everybody can stream. A tiny fraction of those people have an antenna to get it free over the air, and a much larger fraction of the people, but still a fraction of the people, can watch it on cable or satellite. But everybody can stream now. And it's just kind of wild to think, Jesus, is that really where we are? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really where we are. If you're a sports team and you don't have an effective streaming mechanism for your games, you are SOL, dude. That stands for shit out of luck.
Yeah. No, I think we all picked up on that.
Okay.
One last question that I have, and then we'll wrap up, which is ESPN put out a statement right after this news broke. The news broke based on the memo. I don't think either side were prepared to publish this news on Friday, but it came out Friday night. And ESPN came out with a statement saying, we're still going to continue to serve baseball fans. Now, I think hockey fans can tell you that historically, until ESPN got hockey rights, you didn't really see a whole lot of hockey highlights on SportsCenter, and now all of a sudden you see a lot of them. And by the way, the Four Nations match, the Nielsen numbers were crazy on that. It was something like 9 million, over 9 million households in the U.S., compared to like 5 million households in Canada based on non-Nielsen numbers.
Yeah.
But that's aside. The question that I have on this is, ESPN is getting ready to launch their own direct-to-consumer streaming service.
Right.
All indications is this is going to launch later this year, probably around the start of football season, which would make sense.
So by definition, no baseball there. None, not even a sniff.
Probably not. No. And my thinking is, if you're ESPN and you're building a direct-to-consumer streaming service that's going to offer your multiplex, your cable multiplex for the first time, is your value proposition suddenly lessened by the fact that you now are not going to have baseball unless you can come up with some kind of sub-licensing agreement with the teams, which doesn't seem like that's going to happen because they're not getting the major networks involved. They're getting local broadcasters involved in this. So is the value proposition to the consumer now lessened because they don't have baseball?
Well, let's look at the people who are in the sports mix. And this includes the FUBO thing, okay? There are not that many organizations who would have the ability to truly aggregate a national sports feed and then even regionalize it for individual teams. For example, someone who could pick up Atlanta games, Philly games, Baltimore games, Sacramento games, whatever, put them all in the platform, stream them all out there, and do the whole geolocating thing to make sure that you get the Sacramento games and I get the Baltimore games.
Hmm.
You need to have a fair amount of muscle. You need to have scale. And I think ESPN could have an opportunity. And maybe that's actually why they got out of the deal that they had with MLB, because an aggregation profile for them actually makes a lot more sense. Where they, whether or not you pay a premium to get some service, Yankees Yes Network, right? The
Hmm.
fact of the matter is, if ESPN became the place that you went to for all sports, that is a monumentally powerful position.
Yeah, that would really solve the issue that I have with putting together the spreadsheets. And ESPN seems to be going in that direction. We did a
Yeah.
story not too long ago about their aggregation methods in their app, where they updated their app so that now they're pointing to the RSN broadcasters that are carrying certain games from certain teams. I'd have to go and revisit that story to see precisely what they're doing, but they're clearly leaning into the idea of being a sports aggregator, which is smart for a couple of different reasons. From a business standpoint, a lot of these streaming services have affiliate partnerships, affiliate marketing partnerships, and they'll pay out commissions to
Yeah,
companies that
sure.
will resell their service. And ESPN, could very well be a successful aggregator of these products. The problem with that strategy is to watch the games, you have to leave the app. So ESPN is, and I think this goes to your point, is probably in the best position to figure out that problem
To make it
of
look,
to
I'm a
make it more
big fan of one
seamless.
click. Find
Yeah,
click once and I'm there.
me too.
Okay. And you need to have scale, muscle, tons and tons of back end technology to make that crap work. But
Yep,
mostly you have to have scale and you have to be available to everybody.
yep.
And
And
that's where it works.
again,
I am
I
also
agree
a
with you.
believer in aggregation. You and I have had the conversation. I think that somebody like Comcast ends up picking up all the old cable networks from
Hmm.
Paramount and Warner and Discovery and Scripps and all those guys, and of course their own networks, and create a relatively low priced version of cable on a streaming basis, available through Xfinity, but not just to Xfinity homes, but nationwide. I think that's, if there is a single solution to the mess that we've made, it lies there. And
Yeah, I
ESPN
agree.
could very easily be and would be the one that consumers would say, ah, I get that.
Yeah,
ESPN could
ESPN.
be the place to bring all the sports together.
I think they're working on that. I think the other company that's working on that, you mentioned Xfinity, they do have some streaming slimmer TV packages, but you're right, it's only available within the footprint. I don't completely understand why that is. I'll follow up with them and ask them that next time I chat with them. But the other company that seems to be doing this pretty aggressively is Fubo, and I
Yeah,
think that
but
Fubo's
Fubo doesn't have scale. They don't have the pockets. Yeah, they've got Disney, but the fact of the matter is, if Comcast came to Disney and said, we're going to do a solid with you, we're going to
Mhm.
put your ESPN aggregation service every place we are. And oh, by the way, we are everywhere because everybody has a broadband pipe. Okay.
Mhm.
We're going to do that with ESPN. You're going to give us a better deal on the Disney content, and all of a sudden you've got something that sort of just, it smells right to me. Frankly, it smells like old cable. And we did a lot of things wrong, but the one thing we did right was he gave everybody one place to find everything. We just have a little too much to find now.
How much of that was out of necessity, though? Because there really wasn't another until satellite came along. There really wasn't another way to get
Oh, it wasn't
a
out of
bundle of
necessity.
channels to
Look,
get.
cable grew because, I mean, it started obviously in my old days. It started
Mhm.
as a service to get better signals, but
Mhm.
then it got to original programming, and Turner came in, Ted Turner came in, and HBO came in, and all the rest, and everybody else saw an opportunity. My God, you've got people signing up for this service hand over fist, and we've got advertising we can get out there to them. And with advertising, we can make programming. With program, we can make an audience. And with audience, we can get advertising. And we created that loop in there. I don't think
Mhm.
it was out of necessity by anyone. There was not a reason in the world why Discovery had to launch Animal Planet 2, 3, and 4. Not a
No,
reason.
but what I'm saying is that Discovery Channel had to launch on cable. There was no they
There
were
was
not
no
going
alternative
to
for that. That's right.
there was only one network that launched successfully on broadcast post cable, and that was Fox.
Yeah.
You know, you could argue that there were successes in UPN and WB, but Fox was really the one that was the runaway one. And I think a lot of that just had to do with the fact that there was so much cash put behind that network. But cable was to the comment of necessity is that there was no other platform until the internet came along.
Okay,
to
but
be able to distribute out that content and those channels.
you're putting the cart before the horse. John Hendricks at Discovery didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to create programming. Let me go find a home." No. John Hendricks said, "Oh my God, look at how much money I can make over there on cable.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let's do a strategy that makes that work." He started with the distribution possibility. He didn't say, "I've got something and now I got to scramble to find a place for it." No, it started with the distribution opportunity.
Is that how most of the cable networks
That's how they all
started up?
started.
Yeah.
That's how they all started.
Well, that we'll have to end on that note because we're out of time. But I did want to just very quickly mention two things. One,
Yes,
we're
sir.
taking next week off. We will be back the following week, so we'll see everybody. What is that? Mid-March. And also, second is that this week, the week that we're taping, there's a ton of companies that are reporting their
Earnings.
fourth quarter and full year earnings. And I rattled off a list to Rick right before we started recording, and I'm not going to do it again. But we'll be covering them on the desk throughout the week. Fubo is one of those companies, and we brought up Fubo a couple of times. I believe they report Friday morning. It'll be their first report since the Disney deal came together, so I'm hoping that they'll have some more comments on that. We'll also see Paramount is reporting this week. It's going to be interesting to see what they have to say as far as their earnings go. And then a lot of the local broadcasters, the independent local broadcasters, and they're becoming a bigger part of our coverage area. So if you don't already get our newsletters, we'll be alerting all of our newsletter subscribers to the news as it comes down. We're on all the socials. You can follow us on LinkedIn. And I'm sure there will be no shortage of things for us to talk about.
That's true.
This time in 2 weeks.
And the way I refer to a week like this is earnings or lack of same.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, all right, buddy. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. We'll catch you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.